Hi everybody, I'm back for that second presentation that I spoke to you earlier today about the possibility of my doing. I've decided to go ahead and do that presentation. The presentation was to be about my conference call today that was to take place with Grand Canyon University PhDs, a scheduled conference call to discuss my supposedly having violated ethical standards and codes of conduct during my practicum experience. Whether you are aware or not, a practicum is when you find a location and you commit to volunteering and working there without pay to experience all aspects of a mental health facility. That process took quite a while, so I began many months in advance. I had experienced letters, emails returned from most of the people, probably more than 50, that they had already completed their internship applications for the year. However, there was a center in Cobb County, quite a distance from here, where I went and interviewed, a very lengthy, extensive interview. The reason for that, I believe, is because of who I am and the work that I do. Unlike most people, I sent 2 resumes. One detailing my prior corporate and educational work experience and education, as well as everything that I've been doing since I became an avid HIV dissent activist. I included my website, pictures of myself, my book cover, pages from my website, and detailed some of the things that I had been doing because this is the direction that I wanted my career to go. I had enrolled at Capella University years back and got all the way up to the very end where all the students convened on Washington, D.C., from all across the country, and where I was also inducted into the National Honor Society there from all the dedicated years of work. All the people that I had met there in classes were now in D.C. It just so happened at the very time when my book was being published and a public relations person that I hired had sent me an email asking me to send this letter to everybody in my contacts, which I did, excited about the possibility of advancing the awareness of HIV and promoting my book. I sent that email to everybody in my contact list, not realizing at that time that I was in violation of a student code of ethics, soliciting business from students or faculty. I would never have done that had I not known specifically about it, even though it is my fault that I sent that email out, not intending to have any person affiliated with the university to fund me in anything. I was the one who was funding my education through United States government student loans. But anyway, in the final week of the class at Capella, the end of all the coursework, I noticed that a grade that I had received in week 1 of week 10 of 10 weeks had been changed from 100 to a 50 in the last 10th week of that course. Of course, I was immediately alarmed and contacted the professor. That process ended in one, like what was supposed to happen on today at Grand Canyon University. I had a conference call with 9 PhDs where I unbeknownst at the time to why I would be expelled from school, detailed who I am, what I was all about, and that I had been introducing HIV dissent since day one. In every course, you are required to introduce yourself. And I always mentioned my experiences that caused me to leave the education of behavior disorder students, where my first master's degree was in, to change professions to mental health counseling. However, I believe that Capella expelled me without any explanation other than the fact of violating that law or rule or ethical code about soliciting business. They never said anything about all of my dissent work, all of the dedication, the hours and hours and hours of study, writing, reading, researching to gain that degree. So, of course, I was depressed when I was expelled from school. It took a while to recover from that, but I eventually located a school. Even though it was a Christian academy, they claimed, like most schools, to be multicultural and accepting of individual differences when it comes to culture, spirituality, race, and ethnicity. So I enrolled in that program. However, I lost many of the credits I had already earned at Capella. I only received credit for 4 of the 11 that I had earned. So I had to retake all of those courses, leading all the way up to the end here at Grand Canyon University, where I was supposed to, again, today at 3:15 Mountain Time, which is 2 hours behind me here in Atlanta, Eastern Time, I wanted to hear from those professors what exactly I did to violate codes of ethics. I had always found a loophole in the codes of ethics about if you have knowledge as a professional counselor of any technique, any new research or information that could benefit saving the life of your client, you are obliged to share that information. So even though I knew that knowledge of bogus HIV was not well known, I knew that counselors would experience clients like myself, clients who have been suicidal, depressed, suffering mood and substance abuse disorders, looking for help to perhaps understand receiving a bogus HIV diagnosis in a new way. I would be that person. I had many students at both schools who were very excited to learn the information I was sharing, and many who also could see the difficulties. All of my advisors at all schools said, Damien, sometimes you have to chew the meat and spit out the bones. Do what you have to do to get this degree. And then, like my father had said many years ago when I was in special education, wondering, why do you want to work with the students who seem like they don't want to learn? And I said to him, what better place to be, to teach someone the value of an education? And so he said, you have to make the changes from the inside. My father is Dr. Laster, a PhD. He was over instruction and curriculum in my county, Montgomery, Alabama, as the supervisor of instruction. So I embarked on the arduous task of gaining another master's degree in mental health counseling, professional mental health counseling. And this is after I had earned a Doctor of Metaphysical Science degree from the University of Metaphysics, and paying all the fees to gain all of the credentials to protect myself as I ventured out into the world to share the truth about bogus HIV and many other things. As again, we are in the age of truth, and all manner of deception is being exposed. Now, what I want to show you now is the letterhead that came, I'm trying to get a good angle there, from Capella University with a transcript, pages of transcript here, detailing essentially the conversations that I had with other students as required in that course, in assignments, weekly assignments during the Practicum period internship site experience. We were required to talk about our experience, and in that experience I detailed how from week one throughout the experience I was experiencing various things, the first of which was the fact that my director wanted me to be over a program he had for adolescents. Not over it, but as part of it. One of the group leaders of those sessions that were held throughout the week. And so I mentioned to him, now, you know, I left teaching. I am moving into mental health counseling. I'm more concerned about some of the more serious mental health issues based on my own personal experience, like Kundalini awakening, given that 60% of people diagnosed schizophrenic have really experienced Kundalini awakening, spiritual crisis, and spiritual emergence. But he assured me that I could gain every experience required under the school program. He claimed that he had done it quite often and that would happen. Well, I ended up having to be very assertive while on that program, because the school requires in that class that certain hours be gained getting certain experiences that I had not been getting by the end of the first or second week. So I took it upon myself to speak to other counselors there, some who denied me access to watching their sessions, and others who allowed it. And in that process, I learned a lot about what I later began to question, whether it was a satellite center that we spoke about in the eradication process of black underclass all over this country. Now, I made no accusations. I called no names. I talked about my observations about not having seen any black male clients other than the few in the adolescent program, none in the adult program where there were mostly Hispanic women and a couple of black women. I mentioned that to the student in our discussions. By the end of that 10 weeks, normally our professor will respond to each student at least 2 or 3 times in a quarter, and she had not responded to my bringing up these issues about bogus HIV and about any of my experiences during the practicum process. So I sent her a letter in the very last week of school, in the week 10, and the response I got was a letter from GCU inviting me to take some courses or something at that time that they were going to decide perhaps I needed because I was in violation of code of ethics. At that point, I could see that what was happening here at this school was the same thing that happened at Grand Canyon University. I was being, in my mind, set up to be expelled from the university. Now, for me, a university is a universe city. It is a place where scholars gather to discuss, share, research ideas, and research. It is not a place like an elementary school where you rotely learn facts and regurgitate them. It is a place to expand human knowledge and awareness. And what I want to show you here today is some of what you've already seen. What I have done in sharing what it's like for me carrying the energy of Kundalini around daily. I mentioned to you that your life changes drastically from the moment of that awakening. And I am thankful to Mama Nebthet for showing up in Raven form, although it took me years to figure out what that was. I now know, guiding, guarding, and protecting me all along the way. Now, in my book, which I'll show you later, are these scholars, black, highly melanin master teachers like myself. Dr. Nancy Turner Banks, Dr. Jewel Pookrum, both of them are MDs. Jehuti Mayat Ra next to them. And then Scott Whitaker, Bobby Hemmett, and Phil Valentine. In my Impromptu Nebthet musical presentations, again, all of the presentations on self-healing are there, and I speak more in depth about who they are. But I wanted to show here their contributions. First of all, my first book, which I never got behind because I couldn't afford to hire an editor, and there were typos, and the subject matter being so sensitive that I didn't want to get behind something and have people call attention to typos. So, even though the manuscript was finished many years later, I was asked to publish my book through a guy who self-publishes, and this is the result of it. But that took many years after I figured out the truth about bogus HIV. My arm is getting a little tired. I'm going to attempt to switch arms without dropping or turning off the recording. But moving right along, my book, the second book that I invested more in, as well as added all the information that I had learned. And it just so happens that now I've advanced well beyond even this book. But it is a book of scholarship. It is a personal journey through the chakra system, informing others who are dealing with the same situations how they can realize that their self-created physical illnesses are the result of ill states of consciousness, not of a bogus HIV virus that was never proved to exist, only propagandized. But this is my book. It contains a full chapter about Kundalini, which was my dissertation in metaphysical science about self-healing. My master's degree was in the metaphysics of self-healing. My doctorate degree was all about the reawakening of Kundalini energy and the return of the Divine Mother. As well as that study I mentioned to you all about that I did in graduate school about lack of social support for people who receive the HIV diagnosis all over the planet, and how they come to their own conclusions to stop taking those toxic drugs because they are by that time experiencing the debilitating effects. Many people would think when those drugs or when they begin to experience direct effects, that it's the virus coming on. But it's not the virus, it's the killer drugs. Now, I don't know how to say that in more ways than I already have. But moving right along, Scott Whitaker wrote a book called Medicine. I love the play on words there. But in it is a chapter, and he also has a YouTube presentation, if I'm not mistaken, about the HIV debacle and crisis. A black scholar. And next, you've seen me teach quite a lot about her. She's available on our website with everyone I'm showing you here today, detailing the real deal when it comes to AIDS, HIV, and many other horrible things that happen on this planet. Again, she has moved out of the country to protect her own safety. Also, I would like for you to hear excerpts from this book as well as the one that I'm about to hold up. Also, in the musical presentations, the interview with Dr. Nancy Turner Banks. Quite compelling. As well, again, in the Rainbow Warrior Companion documentary section on the website ConsciousDoctor.com, you can hear her speak in radio interviews that were broadcast globally. Dr. Banks, I love you so much. And her second book, The Slow Death of the Cancer AIDS Paradigm and the Apocrypha of the Eukaryotic Cell. I am advancing in this book, though not quite finished yet. I do believe the eukaryotic cell has something to do with melanin. But this is her second book. Excellent reading for the science mind. And of course, Dr. Layla Africa, a nutritionist who helps people like us all over this planet. He also has an entire chapter about HIV/AIDS. And I love the way he presents in person as well as in his book. He makes you laugh at how ridiculous some of the things that we fall for really are. Dr. Layla Africa. Now my phone is ringing around my neck. Of course, I'm not going to be able to answer it right now. Oh, I think I will, because it is Grand Canyon University. So, thank you for paying attention to this program, and I'll see you all next time. I am Dr. Damien Q. Laster, a.k.a. Kabir Amin-Ra Ampur Sarset Harakti, the conscious Dr. Rainbow Warrior, metaphysical science, the science of our ancestors. Have a good day. Bye-bye.